Everything we eat traces back to soil, water, and the processes that connect them. In this chapter, we'll look at how soil forms, why their properties matter, how plants use soil, and different farming models, including conventional and sustainable, and how those models shape food systems and the environment. We'll also connect pesticide decisions to broader ecosystem and health effects. And we'll end by asking a practical question: how do we grow enough food while keeping the land productive for the long term? Soil forms very slowly. As rock weathers, it starts to form smaller little particles, and organic matter starts to build up from dead plants and animals. Climate, organisms, topography, time, the parent rock, all of those things shape the process. So soil differs from place to place. If we were to slice the ground open like a layer of cake, you'd see a profile. You'd have an organic rich surface, a darker topsoil, subsoil where we have clay and minerals that accumulate, and deeper layers that start to work towards our foundation or our bedrock layer. Each layer has a role in holding water, storing nutrients, and supporting its roots. Because this formation occurs slowly, soil is best treated like a living, limited resource that we have to protect, not just some medium we can replace every season, like we would in like a raised flower bed. Plants don't just sit in the soil, they negotiate with it. Roots draw in water and essential nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But the soil's texture, pH, and the organic matter, if it's present, determine how available those nutrients are. A sandy soil might drain fast, but starve the plant of water and minerals. A clay rich soil can hold water, but restricts airflow to the roots. If you add in organic matter, you can improve structure, moisture retention, and microbial life that helps support nutrient cycling. When land use damages soil, though, it causes compaction, erosion, and nutrient mining. Yields can drop even if you add fertilizer because the living functions that make the nutrients usable have weakened. Now, some plants evolve to adapt in harsher conditions. So, in places like here in Florida, where we have sandhills and scrubs, those tend to have sandier soils. But there are plants that adapt to them. So, having these different soil layers that might not seem hospitable, it is possible because of those unique adaptations. So each ecosystem might have its own plant profiles that thrive there. And this is also why we tend to see agriculture um, grown in certain regions. So the Midwest, we have a lot of cornfields because that region is better suited. Or in northern regions, we might see more turnips or apples being grown because the conditions are more favorable to those plant species. On this slide, we can see four examples of common soil types. Sand has the largest particle size and has a gritty feel to it. It drains very quickly because the space between those particles is very big. And because of this, it does not hold nutrients or water very well. Silt has medium sized particles. They're smaller than sand but larger than clay. When it's dry, it has a smooth flour like feel to it. And when it's wet, it's very slippery. It holds water and nutrients better than sand and makes it more fertile. Clay has the smallest particle size. They're very tightly packed. They feel sticky when they're wet and can form these hard clumps when they're dried. They hold a lot of water and nutrients, but they drain very slowly, which can lead to poor aeration for roots. So you typically don't see a lot of plants growing in clay, but if you do see them, they're usually adapted in some capacity. Finally, we have loam, which is a balanced mixture of sand, silt, and clay. Usually it has about 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay. It's considered ideal soil for most plants because it holds nutrients well, drains well, but keeps enough moisture for those plants to absorb some of that water. It also has good structure and aeration, and it's a very common soil type that's used in agriculture. Now we'll look at industrial farming versus sustainable farming. Industrial farming is built for high output. Think of large fields growing a single crop, heavy machinery to plant and harvest it quickly, and synthetic fertilizers and pesticides to manage nutrients and pests at a very large scale. This system does deliver a large amount of affordable food, especially when markets have a uniform demand. But there's a trade off. Monocultures can invite pest outbreaks. The soil can erode when fields are left bare. And excess fertilizer can wash away into waterways. Over time, the same practices that boost those short term crop yields start to chip away at the soil structure and biodiversity, making the farms more dependent on those external inputs to maintain production. Sustainable agriculture looks at the harvest of tomorrow while producing the food for today. Its goal is to maintain soil fertility, protect water quality, and support biodiversity, all while remaining economically viable and socially fair. In practice, it means building healthier soil rather than substituting for it, matching crops and practices to local conditions, and treating natural services like pollinators or biological pest controls and nutrient cycling as an asset. The payoff is resilience. Fields that bounce back from drought, floods, and market shifts because their foundation is stronger. So now we're going to talk about genetically modified organisms and pesticides. Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, are crops whose DNA has been intentionally altered to give them specific beneficial traits. Instead of relying on traditional breeding, genetic engineering directly inserts those characteristics such as pest resistance, drought tolerance, faster growth, or enhanced nutritional content to be inserted directly into the plant's genomes. Now, these can have several potential advantages. They can increase crop yields. They can reduce crop losses from pests. And in some cases, they can decrease the need for chemical pesticides. In some regions, they're actually growing these types of crops to prevent nutritional deficiencies in certain communities. However, GMOs also raise important concerns. Some scientists and environmental groups worry about the impact on biodiversity if engineered genes spread into wild plant populations, or if fields become dominated by a small number of genetic varieties. There's also ethical questions about altering species at the genetic level, as well as concerns about corporate control, since many GMO seeds are patented and require farmers to purchase new seeds each season. Another issue is resistance. Pests may eventually adapt to the engineered traits, reducing those long term effects, and that creates new pest management challenges. Pesticides include herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides that are used to control weeds, insects, and fungal diseases that threaten crops. While they can protect food supplies and prevent major agricultural losses, they also come with some significant environmental and ecological drawbacks. Many chemicals don't target just one pest. They can also harm beneficial species such as pollinators. They can also degrade soil because you have species within that soil that can actually produce more nutrients for plants. So when those get into the soil, it kills those organisms. It can also kill natural predators of the pests. So the species that are coming in and feeding off of those pests now are taken out of the arsenal that we use to protect our agriculture. Pesticide runoff can enter into streams, rivers, and groundwater, polluting aquatic ecosystems and affecting wildlife. Over time, repeated pesticide use can lead to resistance. So, a small number of surviving pests can reproduce and pass on resistant traits. This creates a cycle where farmers may need to use stronger chemicals or spray more frequently. This can increase costs and environmental impacts. To help address these challenges, many agricultural specialists promote integrated pest management. This is a sustainable and balanced approach that combines biological, cultural, mechanical, and chemical strategies that can manage pests while minimizing environmental harm. Instead of relying solely on one pesticide, IPM emphasizes monitoring pest populations, using natural predators, rotating crops, altering plant schedules, and applying chemicals only when necessary and in the most targeted ways. The goal is not to eliminate all pests, but to keep their populations below damaging levels while protecting our ecosystems, slowing the development of resistance, and reducing reliance on chemical input. While pesticides can be effective, they also come with some environmental and health risks. Some chemicals can bioaccumulate. We mentioned this previously in another chapter, meaning they build up in the tissue of organisms over time, and they can biomagnify, which is when they become more concentrated as they move up the food chain. This can cause long-term harm to wildlife and potentially to human health. Pesticides can also impact beneficial species like our pollinators and bees and butterflies, which are essential for plant reproduction. Additionally, chemical residue can contaminate soil and water, affecting the entire ecosystem, potentially entering drinking water supplies. A particular concern is a group of chemicals known as persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, which break down very slowly in the environment and can cause serious health effects in humans, including hormonal disruption and increased cancer risk. Another major issue of pesticides is pesticide resistance. So when those same chemicals are used repeatedly, some pests can survive and pass on those traits to the next generation. So over time, the entire pest population can become harder to control, forcing farmers to use those stronger chemicals and pesticides or to use them more frequently. The cycle where pests become resistant, leading to even more chemical use, is known as the pesticide treadmill. It increased cost for farmers, worsens environmental impacts, and creates long-term sustainability challenges. Land degradation refers to the long-term decline in soil quality and productivity. It can occur for several reasons. One is overgrazing, which happens when too many animals feed on the same land and strip away the vegetation that protects the soil from erosion. Deforestation also contributes to degradation by removing trees whose roots hold the soil in place. This leads to increased runoff and nutrient loss. Additionally, the overuse of water, fertilizers, and chemical inputs can damage soil structure and wash away nutrients, leaving behind harmful salts or pollutants. These pressures can lead to processes such as erosion, where the wind or the water carries soil away. Salination is the buildup of salt in the soil from improper irrigation. And desertification is when land that was once really productive gradually turns into desert like conditions. Healthy soils are directly connected to food security, which we talked about in the previous chapter. When soil loses nutrients, erodes, or becomes too salty or dry, agricultural productivity drops, and communities can struggle to grow sufficient foods. This creates a chain reaction. Degraded land leads to lower crop yields, which then threatens food supplies for people who depend on those crops. Because healthy soil forms the foundation of that productive agriculture, protecting soil resources is important to ensure that long term food security. To address land degradation, a variety of conservation and restoration methods are used. Soil conservation practices focus on keeping soil in place and preserving its structure. Contour plowing is one method, and it involves plowing along natural curves of a hillside, which slows down water runoff and reduces erosion. Terracing transforms steep slopes into a series of step-like flat platforms that hold water and soil in place, and this makes farming possible in mountainous areas. My grandmother actually had this in her backyard, so you can even do this at your own house if you have a slope. Cover crops, such as clover or rye, can be planted during off season to protect bare soil from erosion. It also adds organic matter and suppresses weeds. Reduced or no-till farming leaves crop residues on the soil's surface and minimizes soil disturbance underneath, helping maintain that soil structure, reducing erosion, and supporting beneficial soil organisms. Sustainable farming methods try and keep soil healthy while still growing enough food to support the communities. One important approach is crop rotation, where farmers switch the type of crops they grow in a field each season. This helps break down pest and disease cycles and allows the soil to naturally regain nutrients. Another method is using organic amendments, such as compost or manure. These add nutrients back into the soil and improve the structure without depending on a large amount of synthetic fertilizers. Farmers also use efficient irrigation systems like drip irrigations, which deliver water directly to the plant roots. This reduces wastewater and helps prevent problems such as salination, where salts can build up in the soil. Additionally, farmers can work to reduce chemical use by applying pesticides and fertilizers only when they need them and where they need them. This targeted approach can help protect the soil and water from contamination. Beyond the individual fields, land use planning plays a major role in protecting soil. Communities can decide where farms, forests, conservation areas, and development should be located. Good planning can help prevent unnecessary deforestation. It can protect fragile habitat and ensure that land is used in a way that keeps the area productive for a long term. I will say these meetings usually do not attract a large number of people, but they are extremely important. I encourage you to look into any kind of zoning meetings within your community, become familiar with them because they are one of the most effective ways to make sustainable changes within your community. Restoring damaged land is also essential for places that have already experienced degradation. Reforestation and afforestation, planting trees where forests once stood or creating new forest, can stabilize soil, improve water retention, and rebuild wildlife habitat. Replanting native vegetation also supports a healthy ecosystem because these plants are well adapted to the local conditions. Soil rehabilitation techniques may involve adding organic matter, repairing erosion, gullies, improving drainage, and reducing salt levels in the soil. Over time, these efforts rebuild that soil fertility, they strengthen the entire ecosystem, and they create landscapes that can support sustainable agriculture and long term food security.